Welcome back to Assen for the second race of the weekend from the Lotus Cup Europe. Before the break we saw the man, the rear of your screen, Christophe Lezondre, pointing the wrong way. He almost tries to do the same there going through turn one. Well, he's recovered, having lost just the one position to Gregory Rass. So Lezondre demoted into fourth place. Unfortunately, rather breaking up the excellent battle that we had going on for second position in the early stage of the race. It's Steve Williams who is leading the way from John Rass. That's the orange car at the head of your shot. Then in second place is Gregory Rass. That is the white 122 machine, putting a lap on the recovering Yves Couraman. And then Lezondre has been demoted into fourth position. So Gregory Rass making his way along the back straight. And, well, he was bottled up behind Christophe Lezondre. So Lezondre making life a little bit easier for Gregory Rass as the race leader. Steve Williams exits the chicane. And Williams, who took the lead in the very early stages of the race, since then has not been headed and, well, has just been driving absolutely superbly. Williams, who is one of the most tenacious competitors in the Lotus Cup Europe, always very entertaining to watch in the dice. Today he has had nobody to dice with, although John Rass is beginning to close in on his tail. So whether Steve Williams will up the pace or not, I don't know, but I think he might be advised to do so, because we saw for the first time ever yesterday an Exige win a Lotus Cup Europe race in the form of Mark Schipper. Well, today John Rass would like to become the second person to win a Lotus Cup Europe race in an Exige, so he chases down the yellow 211 of Steve Williams. Williams makes his way along this curving back section of the circuit that will bring him through to the final chicane, and then another lap will be completed. But this being a timed race, it's that balance between doing as many laps as you can and also just playing the clock just right, so you didn't have to do any more laps than you absolutely have to. So we've got a reasonably good crowd here at Assen today to support the Lotus Cup Europe, which has throughout 2010 produced some very exciting racing. And this is the final race of the 2010 season, as out of the chicane goes Steve Williams. He has got 14 minutes and 50 seconds left on the clock. Plenty of midfield battles still to be resolved, as Marc Goudet, this is where around Goudet, who was an early spinner in yesterday's very wet race, has not really shown as much as we'd have expected to from him this weekend, as he's under pressure from the recovering Gregor Zečka, who was in the leading group in the early stages. He had that spin and is now picking his way back up. You can see Zečka, the rear of the car, moving around. He's being very bold with his right foot onto the accelerator as he looks to move past Marc Goudet. Goudet doesn't want to give it to him too easily and holds the line, so Zečka just settles in behind Marc Goudet. Now we should be able to find some space up the inside line here as we go into left-hander. So that's exactly what he does. And then does he run out a little bit too wide? No, he doesn't. He then goes slightly defensive as they run towards the chicane before moving across, claim the racing line. So another position reclaimed for Gregor Zečka, where he runs a bit wide through the chicane. And, well, Zečka be advised not to be too bold, because yesterday, of course, he became good friends with the tyre barrier just about there in the closing stage of the race. So Zečka trying to move his way up the order as Pete Story looks to the inside of Laurent Febvre at the very head of the shot. Story recovering from his first lap spin in this race. Gregor Zečka is one of those drivers you could watch all day, because the car is moving around so much underneath him, and somehow he always seems to more or less keep it pointing in the right direction, and keep it in the right direction going very quickly indeed, as the late afternoon sun beginning to fall low in the sky and causing the water on the track to really glisten in the driver's eyes. Taking the very wide swooping line around the left-hander is Gregor Zečka. That gives him a good exit onto the straight, although he again becomes very well acquainted with the curbs on the exit, and you just don't want to get your foot down too early on those painted curves, because the car will just turn around on a dime. So Gregor Zečka for the moment keeping Marc Goudet at bay into the chicane on the back straight. This is where Zečka spun earlier in the race. Unsurprisingly, given that curbs a wide berth. Markus Nikovic leading the production class. James Knight closing in on his tail. So James Knight has seen off the attentions of Gavin Kirby and is now focusing on wrestling that production class lead away from Markus Nikovic. Although Knight going very sideways in the rear of the shot, that's not really going to help him too much. So Nikovic gaining a tenth of a second over James Knight, who's still there. So he didn't spin around. So Markus Nikovic, but this is one of his strongest showings in the production class all season. As James Knight, again, another driver who's always very exciting to watch, pushing the car to the absolute limit as he closes in on Marcus Nikovic. You can see Knight using a bit more of the track, a bit more of the curbs. That's maybe gained him a couple of tenths on Marcus Nikovic as they come up to the chicane to end the lap. And again, James Knight closing in on Marcus Nikovic under braking. So Nikovic taking quite a flat line through the chicane. James Knight swooping through, he carries the speed, and that means he closes now right onto the tail of Marcus Nikovic. We're into the closing stage of the race. And so James Knight only got a couple of laps really if he's going to find his way past Marcus Nikovic. He looks the inside of Nikovic, so they're going to turn one. Nikovic holds on around the outside. He's going to find a bit more traction on the outside of the circuit. And so James Knight, well, if it was dry, that would have worked. In these damp conditions, runs out of grip and as a result has to remain in that second place in the production class. So they go through a sequence of right-handers, whichever tighten, and then into the incredibly tight left-hander that will propel them onto the back straight. The other thing they've got to consider is that in the background there is the yellow car. That's the Exige of Olivier Cunha, which on paper at least is a great deal quicker than these production class Elises. So this could be very close indeed. As if Cunha embroils himself in that battle, then that could be James Knight's opportunity to find his way past Marcus Nikovic. Equally, it could be Nikovic's demise. So they go through the chicane, and again, James Knight slides. Nikovic clouts the curbs. Two very contrasting styles, but they exit pretty much exactly where they entered as they move on to the second phase of the back straight, then into the tight right-hander, and James Knight may be lining up for a move here on Nikovic. They're coming down the hill to the left-hander. Now this could be an overtaking opportunity, certainly up the inside their space. Olivier Cunha thinks their space. Olivier Cunha launches the inside of James Knight. James Knight holds around the outside, but James Knight, well, that's the last thing he wants is Olivier Cunha right on his tail. As Knight then goes onto the curbs, really trying to force that move on Marcus Nikovic. And maybe they'd be advised just to let Cunha through. Instead, Knight goes for the move up the inside of Nikovic. And Knight, has he gone through? Well, no, he hasn't. He goes around. James Knight spins. He led the production class for about 2 metres. And then he goes round and onto the grass. And he has another spin just for effect. And so James Knight, well, he's second in the production class. I haven't seen Gavin Kirby go through just yet. Yeah, there goes Gavin Kirby now. So James Knight is going to rejoin several positions down as Steve Williams is still leading the race somewhat imperiously and has now pulled away decisively from John Rass. And Rass in turn under no immediate threat from his brother Gregory, and we're very much in the closing stages now. So I think barring mechanical malady or grave driving over from Steve Williams, the victory is looking like it could well be his. So he goes into the chicane on the back straight, and the curbs here at Assen, they're so low profile. Certainly in dry conditions it'd be very enjoyable, I think, for the drivers to attack those curbs, which is what John Rass is doing in the closing stages. He comes up onto the tail of Thierry Verheist to put a lap onto Thierry, and around the outside of him he goes. So there's nothing now except for empty track between Steve Williams and John Rass, but I just think that's too much of a gap to close down on what is the final lap of the race. Gregory Rass at the back of the shot in the white car in third position. So through the left-hander goes John Rass as Steve Williams. Just a few corners now between himself and the checkered flag, and Williams has had this perfectly under control all race long. He has been one of the stars of the Lotus Cup Europe and indeed the Lotus on Track Elise Trophy throughout 2010. And to claim a victory in the final race of the season is very much just desserts for him. So he comes through these sweeping curves that will bring him in to the final left-hander, and then the chicane that will end this, the final lap of the final race of the 2010 Lotus Cup Europe season. Through the left-hander goes Steve Williams. He's just got the chicane to negotiate. He breaks for it now. He goes into the right-hander and then across the curbs of the left-hander, then back through the right-hander again. He can see the checkered flag being readied, and it's Steve Williams who claims the victory at Assen. The arm goes out of the cockpit, he punches the air into the light. Second place goes to John Rass, and third place, a little bit distantly, is Gregory Rass, but Gregory Rass claiming third position. A very good weekend for the Rass brothers. Recovering up into fourth place is Mark Schipper. So Mark Schipper taking 4th position. Yesterday's winner unable to repeat the trick on a damp and drying circuit. What about the production class? Well, it's Markus Nukovic who's going to do it. Having seen off the challenge of James Knight, Markus Nukovic comes through to the checkered flag and claiming the win in the production class. And in the cup, you can see him punching the steering wheel in delight. Out goes the arm. I'm number one, he says. He thoroughly enjoyed that and thoroughly deserves the victory. Steve Williams, who claims the victory from John Rass and Gregory Rass, with Mark Schipper in 4th and Christophe Lisandre rounding out the top 5. In terms of the classes, well, the 211s won by the race winner Steve Williams from Christophe Lisandre, and a very strong drive from Philippe Loup to claim 3rd. The Exige class won by John Rass from Gregory Rass and Mark Schipper. Markus Nukovic took production class honours from Gavin Kirby, and then James Knight recovered to claim 3rd. And David Harvey was the winner of the invitation class. So some very delighted drivers on the podium receiving their trophies and the applause of the Lotus Cup Europe community.
As this is the last race of the year, we will be doing an end of season awards here at Assen.
Well, end of season awards time, it was Christophe Lisandre who was the 211 driver of the season. Gregory Rass claimed the Exige honours after a very strong year. Delighted James Knight was the production class driver of the season, and in his absence it was BJ Chong who was crowned the invitation class driver of the year. The overall 2010 Lotus Cup Europe driver of the year was Gregory Rass. Very nice painting and trophy he's got through his troubles as well. So that concludes what has been an excellent season of Lotus Cup Europe racing in 2010. Enjoy the winter and we'll see you back in 2011 for more of the same.